Win some Proline tyres, win some Proline tyres. Or you can win, get this puppy out of here, a winch. And it even comes with its little worn sticker. How cool is that, eh? So guys, that's going to be this year's competition. Some guys need tyres, some guys need a winch. Write me in the comment which of the two you need, and I shall put you in the draw. Now let's get back into today's video. So on this week's show, we're going to talk about, is my Class 1 comp truck legal? So I got 28 points. We're going to run through one by one to explain exactly what the truck needs. So I'm going to be running through the rules and regulations of a Class 1 truck and see if I got my build right. So first on the list is a Class 1 truck needs to have their steering servo in the chassis, not on the axle. Seeing that this is a TRX4 chassis, it's legal. Number 2 on the list is it needs a windscreen. So a Class 2 truck doesn't, but the Class 1 needs a windscreen. Now we get to the bumpers. So although the regulation states front and rear full-size bumper, on a flatbed, you don't need a rear bumper. So I don't run a rear bumper on this, and I'm not actually that sure if I can get away with what I've done here. So I've got a little metal beam holding the body together, and the body extends over the actual chassis rail. But seeing that it's a pickup truck and not a flatbed, I don't really know how I am in line with my rules on that. So that might be a point where I get failed. And speaking about bumpers on a Class 1 truck, if you do change the original bumpers, the bumper can be modified to the body. You can replace your stock bumper, whereby normally the body runs a little bit further down and the bumper is put onto that body. Now, there's a rule you can trim your body off to the original bumper height. So that is kind of in line with the lights, somewhere there. So measure out or draw a line where your original bumper lies. When you replace your original bumper, you can just cut that line and pull the other bumper in and even push a little bit further back so your angle of attack gets a bit better. So basically your bodies could vary a little bit. So trimming up to the lights, so not just only trimming up to the original bumper line, but you could also trim up all the way to your lights. I've done it in this case to my bottom lights and the grille. If you look at it like that, I have a little bit of space underneath that where I still have a little area for the winch to come through. So basically I am almost in line with the bottom light. So that is on the front, and on the rear you can trim it up to the bottom of the lights, or it's actually the tailgate. So the first regulation, the first rule is you can trim the height of the tail up to the tailgate, or the back of the truck up to the tailgate. Now you can also trim the back of the truck up to the bottom of the lights. So kind of the same regulation as in the front. I don't have a tailgate anymore and I don't have lights anymore. So I'm coming back to that point where I might not pass inspection. Then coming to the wheels, and more the wheel wells. The wheels, the center of the wheels must line up with the center of the wheel wells, front and rear. You're allowed to have ½ an inch difference over the total length. And mild trimming to the body on the wheel well, that is allowed, but not hectic trimming like on a Class 2 truck. And you can also remove your fender flares. Now this truck doesn't really have fender flares, but let's say you are running a JK Jeep or something like that, you are able to take your flares away. The problem with that is that your wheels stick out too far, and there's another regulation actually slowing you down on that. And coming to the center side of the truck, trimming the body to make the body narrower is not allowed, and bending any types of materials around corners or anything like that is considered boat siding. What I've actually done here is these are my fastening points of the body. I have 2 fastening points in here, and I have 5 on the left and 5 on the right. So these are my fastening points because I don't have any body posts. It's actually a bit confusing. Let's say we have a normal rock slider underneath here, or the body just ends without a rock slider underneath it. You're not allowed to trim the body off or bend the body around the corner to get more ride height out of the body. That's considered boat siding. So basically, on a class 1 truck, you are not allowed to do any major modifications on the body. It should stay as stock as possible. You are allowed to do modifications, but they are not very major. And unlike a class 2, where the bodies are actually shorter than the end of the tires, or front and rear end of the tires, the bodies actually can sit in. On a class 1 truck, the body and the bumper has to exceed the actual tire. So driving it up to a wall, there needs to be a space between the front of the tire and the wall. The tire is not allowed to touch the wall before the bumper. The bumper must touch the wall before. And the same thing with the back. You can trim the back of the truck up to a certain point. You're not allowed to go shorter than the actual rail. So I am sitting approximately 1/2 centimeter over with my body, over the rail with my body. The next regulation would be that the tire is allowed to exceed the side of the body, but only by 1/2 inch beyond the wheel well. If you have more than 1/2 inch, you can actually add fender flares. So I could 3D print myself something that would fit my slightly modified wheel arch to accommodate that my wheel is maybe sitting a little bit beyond the 1/2 inch. And speaking about tires, we are allowed to run a 2.2 rim, and we are allowed to run a 4.19 tire. Just had to peek at my rule list there for a second. So that is the maximum tire that you can put on a class 1 truck. And you need to keep your tire tread original. You cannot go in and cut out sections of your tire tread and modify your tire tread to get more grip out of your tires. I've seen it on super swampers, specifically super swampers, where they cut off every second knobby on the super swampers. It looks very cool, but that's against regulation. And coming to our chassis, we need to run, in a class 1 truck, you need to run a full length chassis. It needs to be out of metal, and it needs to be longer than the wheelbase. So wheelbase means center axles. So there's a regulation on the chassis that it has to have a 0 skid angle. A skid angle means that the bottom part of the chassis sits at a different angle than the top rails. If that makes sense. Okay. You also get skid plates that have angles. In this case, we need to run standard skid plates as well. So basically at the end of this, I'm going to name a couple of chassis that are legal in the class 1 competition, and with those you can't actually go wrong. So if you're a little bit confused about all the rules that I'm punching down right now, you can just read up on the last couple of chassis that I'm going to name, and then you can't make a mistake. And on some chassis, your shock towers or shock hoops can be brazed or welded. They also can be bolted, like on the TRX4 chassis, you just bolt them on. So your shock towers or your shock hoops are allowed to be bolted, brazed, or welded on. Now coming back to my fault that I'm thinking that I've done with my truck. There's a regulation where it says there's a flatbed regulation. First thing is, if you have a flatbed, it needs to be wider than your cab, and it must exceed to the end of the rear tires. So this is kind of where my thoughts that I've done this right, and then on other rules and regulations I can't really read up on it, where I might have done a mistake. So if you add a flatbed, or let's say I don't pass with my normal pickup version of the truck, if I were to add a flatbed to this, my flatbed needs to be wider than the truck and exceed the end of the tires. But in this case, my chassis, it needs to extend beyond the end of my chassis as well. So that's what I've done here. I am just not quite sure if the flatbed regulation applies to a normal pickup truck, because in my head they're the same. What do you think? Okay, and now that we have kind of gone through 27 points, I believe. So a class 1 chassis is an axial SCX10, and I believe it's axial 1, 2 and 3 that are legal in this case. The TRX4 chassis, like the one we have here right now. Then we have the Vanquish VS410. That chassis is legal as well, so when you start building your truck on one of those chassis, you can't really go wrong. The next one is RC 4-wheel drive, the TF2. Then we have crawler space contender, brazen scale, the RC1, the RCC1, the G-Speed V1 C1, and that is, I think, all of it on my list. It could be a bit more. Like, I'm not saying these are all of them, but if you have chassis that are similar to those, obviously you're still in line with the rules and regulations. So that's it. I think in total, this is a very, very capable truck, competing with the others from where it used to be. Now I'm running with the leaders of the pack. I'm not quite in the front yet, but I'm running with the leaders of the pack. So anyway, guys, that's it for me for this week. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.